Okay, we're on the home stretch, and we're going to do the drawing that most people regard as kind of the hardest to do in a set of documents, which will be our building section. One thing you might have noticed when you immediately looked at the building section is that it holds the exact same shape as the south elevation, and that is entirely on purpose. Because again, this building section is being cut directly through this line of windows, looking towards the north, or it would be the same thing as if I was looking at the south side of the building when it comes to that angle or that slope. And we're really going to take advantage of the fact that we already have that built out from our elevation view, so we can copy the bulk of this shape from our elevation view to use then to help build out our section when we're working through it. So I'm going to open my file back up, and I'm going to take my section that I have, or excuse me, my elevation that I have here. I'm going to highlight the whole thing, even though I'm going to wind up gutting quite a lot of it out. I'm going to highlight the whole thing, and I'm going to right click, copy, click on my building. Doesn't really matter where I click, because all I'm going to do is just place mine somewhere around here in between my elevation and my floor plan. I'll wind up moving some of these drawings around. These are really a little close for my comfort, so I'll probably wind up moving like my south elevation down. But I'm going to take my copy here, and I'm going to start to gut quite a bit. I noticed I didn't pick up my ground line, so I'm just going to draw a new ground line in. Line, enter, or click on that here. I'm just going to draw a new ground line in because I didn't copy it. And I'm going to delete my hatch. I'm going to delete my windows for the time being, even though I'm going to sort of kind of want them. I'm going to keep this door here because what I can do in the section cut is I'm going to be able to see this door. So I'm going to leave this door here anyway, since they're in line with each other. I just won't have to draw that line in again. You know what? I actually am going to delete these anyway. I was going to try to use them for things like my tops, but technically I already have that labeled through here. And I'm going to delete my porch, and I'll delete this part here. So essentially, what I'm doing is just giving myself, okay, what's the overall outline of the building, and then I can start to kind of work what I have going on within the actual section. And sorry when I do that little flash thing of this. Go back into my model space. So essentially our very outline of our building is going to all sit in the yellow layer, the heavy layer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to offset in for all of my material thicknesses for things like my walls and my siding and my sheathing. So I'm going to go into the offset tool. Keep in mind, this is from our very outside, so we're just going to keep offsetting in for the thicknesses of our materials. So I'm going to bring this in 3/4 of an inch or 0.75 for my siding. I'm going to bring it in another 1/2 inch for my sheathing. I'm going to bring it in 5.5 for my stud or for my framing, and then I'm going to bring another 1/2 inch for my gypsum wallboard. Then I'll take these lines that I just offsetted in, and I'm going to switch their layer to the detail layer, so that way they are going to be detailing where my walls are going to sit. I'll do the same thing on this side as well. So I'm going to offset, enter for through. I'm going to bring this in 0.75. I'm going to bring that one in 0.5. I'm going to bring that one in 5.5 for my frame. And then again, another 1/2 inch for my gypsum wallboard or for my sheathing. Here. Then I'll click on these three, and I'm going to go into my detail layer, my gray one. And now what I'll also want to do is I'm going to switch myself over to the detail, and I'm going to draw a line just straight across here. I could have used the one that came automatically, I guess, with my uh, from the copy of my elevation, but I'm just going to draw a new one in. So this is the bottom of my floor, and what I want to do is offset this up for the thicknesses of my floor materials. So I'm going to go into the offset tool, which is O, enter, leave it as through, enter, and I'm going to bring it up 7¼ for the thickness of my floor joist, and I'll bring that up a 3/4 of an inch for my plywood deck. Then I'm going to need to trim and kind of finish up all of these lines here, or I guess, yeah, finish up. I don't know why I'm having trouble with words in this video. And I'm just going to trim this part out here. I'm going to leave these lines here, these detail lines or these guidelines here, because the siding goes past where my floor joists are, and so does the sheathing. It's just this part here for my wall stud is sitting on top of that subfloor, and so is my gypsum wallboard. Same thing then on this side is I'm only just going to trim these lines out and these lines out. I'm going to want to change this line to be yellow, or what I could do, because you got to think about layers and how they're going to print, even though we haven't talked about that too much yet. The yellow line's going to print heavy, the gray line's going to print super light. So if I go into my yellow layer and I draw a line only from here to here, that would be technically okay. It would work out the way I needed to. Or I could take this line and I could use the break at point option to break it there. So now this is its own separate line. And the same thing on this side. I'll do break at point here so that this is its own separate line. Well, also, while we're here looking at this area, we might as well add in that little trim board detail too. So that is in the line tool. I'm going to go from this corner up 3.5, enter, out 0.75, enter, and then straight down. And then I'm going to hit escape to end the command. I'm going to delete that little yellow line. I'm going to either bring this yellow line up and then add in a gray piece here, or if I control Z to undo that, I can again use that break at point. Might help if I spell break correctly. To take this line and break it at that point. So this way I can switch this to line 6. And same thing over here. I could, additionally, if I want to, I could highlight all of these parts, and I can use the mirror tool to MI, enter, across the middle of this building. Because since this building is going to be the same on either side, and after I click on top of my mirror, I'll say no to erase my source, this line is going to sit where I want it to already be. So I don't have to technically draw it again on this side. I just need to click on this yellow line and bring it up, because otherwise that yellow line was hiding behind the gray and it would print out, which we don't want it to do. So I've got my little trim there. I've got my line here for my floor. So I'm going to click on this line, bring it, well, I guess I have to break it again. So break at point, because I only want from that part. I only just want the full outline. Click on this line, break at point, click on the point you want to break it at, and switch this to yellow for the outline layer. And then I can start divvying out for my roof as well. So I will use my offset tool, and we can too. I got the measurements for the floor from the instructions, so that's why I did 7¼ up for my 2x8 floor joist, 3/4 inch for my plywood sheathing. For my roof, right now I currently have just the tippy top, so I'm going to go down 3/4 inch for my metal roofing, down another 3/4 inch for my plywood decking, down 7¼ for my rafter, and down another 1/2 inch for my gypsum wallboard. So I'm going to use offset, O, enter, For my distance, I'll leave it as through, enter, and I'm going to bring this down, 0.75, enter, bring this down, 0.75 again, enter, bring this down, 7.25 for my rafter, and then I'll bring this down, 0.5 for my ceiling, for my gypsum wall board. I've got a little bit of cleanup that I need to do when it comes to some of these connections. So I've got a lot of trimming and extending that will need to go on. I'll switch all of these interior ones to my detail layer. And what I usually do is I usually start with my trim tool. So that's TR, enter. And I'm just going to trim the stuff that is going to be obvious that needs to get trimmed. So I believe, let me double click in my drawing here, if our siding is going. So our siding is going all the way up to where it meets here. And let me get rid of my solid hatch. I'm just going to turn it off so this way we can kind of see some of these connections a little bit of essentially what's going to be staying and what's going to be going in our drawing. Which it looks like I accidentally trimmed that part off. Let me go back into trim. I'll get rid of all this stuff. I know this won't be this high up. I know this won't be this high up. Neither will this, but it could be that we actually do this way. So I'll just wait to double check. I know this isn't going to go all the way through. And I know this isn't coming through. And so it's kind of just the connections up here that what I want to do is just check that I've got like my roof and my siding kind of meeting the way that I want them to, of how they lap or how they join with each other. And I think I might have accidentally trimmed that when I didn't mean to or want to. So yeah, I'm going to have the roof overtake that. What you can actually do when you're in trim, if you trim something that you actually didn't mean to, if you hold the shift key, that essentially is let you extend that line back out. So that this way I can have this one overtake the other. I can trim that line out. That one was going to be a little hard to see since I had that def point line sitting on top of it. When it comes to our connection here, my guess will be this gets trimmed out. Let me go back into my drawing. I guessed wrong. So I have Control Z to undo that. TR. So this is a little bit of guessing to make sure. And even then, I trimmed that one out. What I would really want to do instead is use that break tool, break at point, this line at that point. So I can take this and change it to the detail layer. I'm also going to right now type in regen to refresh my drawing, purely because it kept thinking I still had that line selected. Same thing over here with some of my connections. So some of these I'm definitely going to need to extend more than I need to trim, but I'm going to go TR. I'm going to extend this line out, so I'm going to hold shift and extend these lines out. I'm going to trim this top part. I'm going to trim out this line and this line. I have that connection there. And then when it comes to my gypsum wallboard sitting in my rafters, I definitely don't want that. I'm going to hold shift to extend that line out. I'm going to trim this line. I'm going to trim this line. And then I'm going to use break to turn this into two different colors or two different layers. So I'll hit escape. I'll type break at point. I'll select this line, break it at that intersection, and then I can switch the layer that I have here. To bring in the rest of my interior features, like this interior wall that sits in here, as well as then this door here, I'm going to use a pretty familiar technique to you at this point, where I'm going to go into my depth point layer, and I'm going to use the ray tool. So ray, enter, and I'm just going to bring a ray down from the edge of the gypsum wallboard straight down, enter to end it, enter to get back in, straight down from there, enter to end it, enter to get back in, straight from here, enter, enter, straight from here, enter, enter. And then I'm going to use my trim tool to at least just cut it here where this big connection is being made. So I'm going to go into trim, cut it here, cut here, and I'm going to leave that there until I'm just confirm all of my connections. And then I'm going to cut it here where it's going to meet that top of floor. Hit escape a bunch of times. I'm going to click on this bottom part and erase it. I'm going to click on the top part of the ray and erase it or delete it. They could stay there because they are depth point lines, but I find it's just making it a little bit harder to look at. The two very outside ones are going to switch into our line 2 layer, and the two insides are going to go into our line 6 layer. When it comes to some of our connections, of our details, I'm going to zoom in on this drawing, zoom over. So for where our top is, we do have our gypsum wallboard for a ceiling overtaking this one here. So I'll do a TR, enter, TR, enter. I must have typed something different. And I'll get rid of that line, and I'll get rid of that line, and I need to do another break here. Or what I could do is, if I trimmed that away, I could then hit escape, and I could go into the line 6, and I could draw a line, and I can see that I'm following the track of this. So essentially, if I hover over, it'll track to where this new line will keep that same angle, but now be in a different layer. But I just kind of prefer the break at point. Click on the line, click on the point you want to break it at. And I'm going to leave this line work in here because it's going to help me figure out for that header that comes up here. We also have a opening or a cased opening within this wall here. So we need to make sure that we have that detailed in here. So for our cased opening, we are going to measure straight over from where we have our top of our door here. So I'm going to go into my depth point and I'm going to draw a line. I could do a ray, but I'm just going to make it go super far over, especially because I'm actually going to bring it through the whole building. And I'm even going to extend it this way because it'll help me put my windows in, since they're all going to share that same height for it. And then I'm going to trim, TR, enter, and I'm just going to trim this bottom part of the building or of this interior partition wall out. Because what I need to do, if we look at our solution, is it needs to have a different line type, because the back edge of this cased opening is about 1.5 feet away from where our section cut currently sits. So we need to just kind of adjust for that. Which, whoops, I didn't mean to close AutoCAD. There we go. So then I'm going to just switch my line to the light medium and draw a line from very edge of here down to the top of the floor, from very edge of here down to the top of the floor. Next, I can add in the rough opening for my door that sits here. And so I could do that by projecting from my edges here. So again, I could go into my depth point, ray, and go from that corner straight down, enter to end it, enter to get back in. I could also technically project from these windows because the window and the door are both 3 foot wide, and so is this opening. or they're in the exact same spot. And then I could take the doorway that I already have built out majority of here and look to how I'm going from left to right with that, so I get a cross selection instead of a window selection. So I'm only picking up the door. I'll do a right click copy. I'll grab it by this top corner of the rough opening and I'll put it on that top corner. And then I can click on these rays after I hit escape and I can delete it altogether. For my windows, this right here is giving me the top of or the header height for the windows that are sitting in this section view. So I can take, again, this window that already exists here in my plans, and I can copy it into my drawing. So I'm going to do a copy, CO, or I could click on it and right click. I'm going to grab it by its specific corner, and then I'm going to use that to figure out where exactly is this going to be seated in my drawing or in my plan. Then I need to do a lot of trimming, which actually what I may want to do instead of trimming all of that out with the window in place is I'm going to, in the depth point layer, I'm going to draw a line just straight across here, hit escape. I'm going to click on my window and I'm going to move it out so that way it's just a little bit easier to trim all of these parts or pieces out. Another thing I could have done is I could have drawn a line. So I just went up here and clicked on line from the top of the floor, and I could have gone up 2 feet, which is where this sits because this window was built to fit in this drawing perfectly. And I could do TR, enter, and then just blast through that part of the drawing. Trim all this down. Switch my layer here and here to my outline layer, and then move this back into place here. It does have this little bit of like trim jetting out. We'll have to go over, but it's okay. We have the ability, which I actually need to make that yellow. And go over here to my outline layer, line, enter, boom, 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 boom. And I didn't move this straight up, it seems. See, there are little tiny things that we can just goof up on. And sometimes it's not going to be the end of the world, but a lot of times those little things turn into pretty big mistakes. Such as that there's that yellow line there sitting where it's technically not supposed to. I'll just move it down. And if it bugs you that the gray lines are sitting on front of that yellow line that's there, you can click on an object and you can use right click, draw order, send to back, and it'll put it behind it. It's not going to have an impact on how it prints, but I can empathize that it is a little annoying. So I'll delete this. To put my window, I'll delete this line too. Technically, I don't even need my header and stuff on this side because what I'm going to do is a mirror. So I'm going to draw a line just straight across here. Since this is seated perfectly in the middle of my building, I could do it based off of that midpoint. I could have also done it based off of this one's midpoint, this line's midpoint, this line's midpoint. They're all going to be in line with each other. So I'm going to take this window here, and I'll even take this little bit of yellow line work that I made to go with it. So I clicked on the window, and then I did a click over in the side to move over everything else. And this yellow line work up here too. And I'm just going to do a mirror, MI, enter, across this middle. So I'm going to click on that first point, move my cursor straight down. Do I want to erase my source? I do not. And then I have my window seated on this side. What I will need to do though is trim out all of this line work that's sitting behind it. So I'm going to go into my depth point layer, draw a line, that is right here. Highlight my window, move it off to the side, and then TR, enter. You don't technically have to move the window. It's just going to be, in my opinion, a lot easier if you do. And then hit escape, select both of those lines and delete them. Select the window, M to move, enter. Point you want to grab it by, point you want to bring it to. I just have a little bit of trimming then that I need to do here. And you could absolutely do this in a different way. It's not going to have a harmful impact on the drawing as long as like you're getting the same end result. If you wanted to rough cut those openings for the window before you even start placing anything or mirroring anything, if you wanted to escape to end that, click on the grip to bring it down. If you wanted to just kind of put the windows in and then make a copy of it off to the side, mirror it, put it in here, you absolutely could. You don't even technically have to use these blocks if you didn't want to. You could just kind of put everything in yourself manually. Next thing we'll focus on, because I kind of want to do all of the framing stuff in one big go. So the next thing we're going to focus on is doing our foundation stuff. So within our foundation view, let me zoom out. We have a foundation wall that in total is 2 foot 8 inches wide. And so that's from the top of the foundation wall. We're going to measure 2 foot 8 inches down for this. So I'm going to go into my outline tool and I'm going to draw a line, L, enter, from the top down 2 foot 8, enter, and then I'm going to go 8 inches across for how thick this CMU is. And I'll go back straight up. I could measure the exact same thing over here, because keep in mind I could just go line from here down 2 foot 8, 8 inches over, and then straight back up for the next part of the foundation. Or if I control Z to undo that, I could use that mirror function again. So I can select these 3 lines, MI, enter. As long as I'm doing it based off of one of these mirror points, straight down. Do I want to erase my source? No, I do not. I can't do it based off the ground line because this is just some random line I drew on here. Then we also are going to have in our drawing, if I can open it up, we have the finished grade 6 inches below. We already have that line there. And then we have the frost line 2 foot below the finished grade. So what we can do for that, that's not what I meant to do, because I want to keep those grouped, is I can take this line and offset it, O, enter, leave my distances through, enter, click on this line, and I'm going to bring it down 2 foot, enter. So now it's sitting 2 foot below that finished grade. And I'm going to use the trim tool, TR, enter, to cut this part of my grade out and this part of my frost line out. And I'll go back after I put my footings in, I'll go back and kind of fix all of that up. So for my footings, our footing itself is a 2 foot wide, 1 foot deep cast in place concrete footing. I feel like I maybe didn't make my foundation go down long enough. But we'll see, because I feel like my foundation isn't, I don't have that exposed 8 inches, but we'll see. We'll find out. If not, I'll have to move it. Did I make this 2 foot 8? Again, I'm not cutting this out. I don't feel like editing things. So that's 2 foot 8. That's 6 inches. Unless I just want to, I did in the other drawing, I might have just done that as 2 foot instead of 2 foot 6. So We'll keep it as this for now, unless I need to go adjust my instructions. So for my footing, again, it's going to be 2 foot wide. I could draw that as a line from that midpoint out 1 foot this way, 1 foot down, 2 foot over, 1 foot up, and then click to attach it and fix sort of a lot of the overlaps that I have here and draw a new line in, oops, here. So I could do it that way to do kind of my foundation, or what I could also do is if the going to be 1 foot this way, it's sort of the same thing we did with our foundation plan, and this is 8 inches wide, I could just do a line from here over 8 and then go down 1 foot. I didn't go straight down, so I need to hit Control Z. 1 foot, over 2 feet, up 1 foot, and then connect the dots. I'll get the same end result. I'm going to switch this one to a blue line, and I need to draw a blue line on here. So I did it in 2 different ways. I clicked on the wrong layer. And then around my foundation that's sitting underneath the grade, I'm going to draw, I'll actually do it as a polyline, PL. So just around this portion of it, and keep in mind, red is always going to be your heaviest line. So from where grade sits, down, over, down, over, bump, bump. And let me just double check that I'm reading my own instructions correctly. So my foundation wall has a 6 inches below the top of it. Frost line is 2 foot below finished grade. So let me just double check that I offsetted it correctly, because even if it looks different than that drawing set, this is what the instructions say, and I'm following my own instructions. That is a 2 foot difference, so that's what I'm keeping in mind. Next up is we're going to add in our CMUs, so we're just going to detail those as 8 inches in total, each one of them. So I'm going to do an offset, O, enter. For my distance, I'll do through, enter, click, up 8, and up another 8. And so then we have our CMUs on this side, same thing on this side, 8, 8, 8. At this point, I believe I'd be ready to start adding in all of my, this is actually going to bug me. So if I move it here, I'm just going to change it in the instructions. Sorry. Should edit this out, but I'm not. So if I move my frost line to here, I'll give you instructions that actually say the correct amount. How much then is that from the frost line? 1 foot 6. So I'm just gonna boop, boop, boop. Frost line is 1 foot 6. Whoops. There we go. It's like almost like it never was there. Because I think I was doing 2 foot when I did the first drawing. I did 2 foot from the top of the floor to where that frost line sat. Is where I was measuring off of, not the finished grade. Okay. That just looks better, and it would make more sense to have the footing that deep anyhow. Now we are ready to get some of those framing components in. So we'll do like some of our floor joists first, and then we can start doing some of our roof things as well as our headers. So with all of that, it's going to be in the A-line detail level. And what I always recommend students to do is in this layer to make some rectangles off to the side. One of them being a 2x8. So again, that's 1.5, tab 7.25, enter. And then another one So I'll just do enter again to do a rectangle. But this I'll do a 2x8, that's 7.25, tab, why can't I think, 1.5, enter. I'll do another rectangle, so enter. This one I'll do as a 2x6, so I'll do 1.5, tab, 5.5, enter. Enter to do another rectangle, 5.5, tab, 1.5, tab. So this is my 2x8, my 2x6. Enter again, and then I'll do a 2x4. So I'll do 1.5, tab, 3.5, enter. Enter again to go into the tool, and then one sitting horizontally. So 3.5, tab, 1.5, enter. The reason why I like to do a bunch of these is so that way I can kind of copy them throughout my drawing. So for things like my bottom plate, I can take this one, right click, copy. I could grab it by that bottom corner and I could plop it into there. For my sill plate, I need to kind of grab it by that top corner instead. So I'll just have to hit escape, grab it again, right click, copy, grab it by this corner, put it into this corner, and while I've got it, I can do the same thing here on this side for this sill. For my header, I might even want to just like build out a header while I have some of this already selected, or I could just do it manually. Right click, copy, grab it by this corner, put in my header, and then escape. Instead of using this vertical one, I could also just start putting in rectangles up here. So I could go into the rectangle tool, REC, enter, start it in that corner, and go over 1.5, 1.5, tab, 5.5, enter, enter again from this corner, 1.5, tab, 5.5, enter, enter again. So I could just draw these rectangles all in myself. Or I could use that copy paste method from over in here to figure out where each one is going to be going. Either way, you get kind of the same result. With our header above this door here, this is going to be composed of I meant to do copy, enter. It's going to be a 2x4 sitting in between, and then a 2x6. So right click, copy, grab it by this corner, put it in this corner. I can also put another one over here to the side and then hit escape, highlight it, right click, move to move this one into place rather than keep getting them off from that side. Copy, grab it by the bottom, put it onto the top. If I already have this entire header built out here, I can highlight all 4 of those pieces and what I did here was, again, I clicked and I went to the left, so that way I'm getting a cross selection. I could get a lot at once. Right click, copy, I'll grab it by that corner, I'll put it onto that corner. Before I start doing some of my headers, or rather my top plates and stuff, I'll do my floor joists. So with my first floor joist, I'm going to take this 2x8, I'm going to right click, copy, I'm going to grab it by this corner, and I'm going to put it right here and hit escape. So for our first joist, it is, if I go into my depth point layer, from this edge, if I click on this edge and I measure over 16, enter, here is where the center of my next rectangle sits. So I'm going to click on this one, right click, copy, grab it by its midpoint, put it on that midpoint. Hit escape a bunch of times, delete all these. One thing I could do as well, if I wanted to get real fancy, is I could do raise from all the way down here, from my foundation. Since all of these views are lined up with each other, I could do a ray, R-A-Y, enter, and I could do a ray from here, straight down, enter, enter, straight down, enter to end it, enter to get back in, straight down, enter, enter, straight down, enter, enter. Because what this is going to do is it's just going to give me a place in the section view to take all of these and copy them from midpoint to midpoint to midpoint to midpoint. Additionally, what I could do is I could break out a calculator, and I can, if I delete all these, is I could take this one after I've measured over where this one goes to. I could do a copy, grab it by its middle, and I could go over 16 as long as my cursor is showing that I'm straight across. And then I could go over 32, and I could go over 48, and I could go over 64. So I'm just using a calculator to just keep adding 16 to it each time. So every time I just add 16 to a calculator, and I could put all my joist across. If you choose the method where you do these rays, you can just delete them afterwards. But I'm not going to put all of my joist all the way across necessarily. One thing to keep in mind too is when you get to this door opening, what you're going to want to do is to make sure you build up that girder. So how we have those three that are sitting underneath it right in the center, you're going to want to make sure you build that up as well. I'm going to need to add in a yellow line or change part of this to be yellow in this layer. So I just switched my layer to yellow, line here to here. And I would add in the rest of all of my framing components, but I don't want to spend the entire video doing all of the framing components. For your top plate here, we have our ceiling height is 8 foot above the top of the floor. The top of our wall plate, which would be sitting in between these two, is that 8 foot 1.5. Excuse me, I just had a big sneezing fit. So we're going to be kind of where this connection is made here. This is where that top plate sits, or where it gets divided. So I'm going to take one of these ones here, CO for copy, grab it, put one there. Let me make sure I get that yellow line out of there. And then I can take this one, CO for copy, grab it by that corner, put it there, and then TR to trim this part out. And then I can also add in my fascia, which would be sitting as a 2x8. So I can take this, CO to copy it. I'll grab it by this bottom corner. I'll put it on this corner. I'll need to trim it out as well. And I could use trim or delete to get rid of those parts of the gray lines. And then I'm going to take these two and I'm going to copy them from this side over to this side, because they're already going to exist over here. And then we'll need to build out another double top plate up here, which we can, if we want to, take these ones, copy, grab them by the middle where they meet, so that way we can put them where they would intersect here. And then TR, enter, to trim that part out. For that bird's mouth cut, or not necessarily a bird, that's not a bird's mouth cut, just ignore me. And then take this one, copy, grab it by its corner here, place this fascia board in, and then trim this part out for where it's going to be sitting. Oh, wait, no, that is a bridge mouth cut. See? Whoops. Never mind. Pay attention to me. Same thing with our top plate here. So with our top plate for this wall intersection, again, we can see that it's sitting within our inline right here is where that part of the 2x4 is sitting. So I'm going to grab my 2x4 one, copy, enter, grab it by that top corner because that'll be a convenient place to 1, 2, and then hit escape, trim, and we also have a detail line right here. So I'm going to switch my layer to A-line detail, L, enter, and just draw a line up there. What that's referring to is when we're spanning from one 2x8 to another one, so they're lapped at this exact point within the roof. And so, did I not move those straight over? They don't look like they're straight over. No, I did. Okay. I would need another bottom plate over here. And I would need to fill out my floors, but I feel like I've explained how you can do the floor, so I feel like you'd be able to handle it. You could even technically do half the floor and then take these, mirror it across the middle, and then you don't have to do the whole thing, but I'm not going to do my floor. I'm going to leave it kind of as is. I would have to finish up detailing this door. So this is a sliding pocket door, which means it's going to have that 3-foot wide door. And keep in mind, if we're looking at the finalized product, it's 3 foot from here to here. Oh, I also need to add in my baseboard trim in this magenta line. So I can add that in now. I'll switch myself over to the A-line light, or line 5. I'll do a line from here. I'm going to put mine all the way across and then just use trim to take it out. You could also draw it as separate lines. So I'll do TR, enter. I don't want it here in my doorway. I don't want it here. And I don't want it here in this doorway either. I would still need to detail out the rest of my doors, finish up my floor joists, and then add in my solid hatch. One thing that would be really annoying about trying to do a solid hatch in this particular building is the fact that we have all of these different detail components in here. So if I put myself into the ANO poche and I go to hatchet and I pick my material as solid, so I scroll all the way up to solid, I'll have to click in each and every one of these, and that's going to be really cumbersome and really annoying to have to click in every single one of these pieces, especially because right now, like, since it can't see the closed boundary, it just won't fill in. It'll tell me that it can't be determined. And if you ever get these red circles, you can just type regen, REGEN, to make it go away. But the benefit with our layers is what we can do is we can switch ourselves over to our poche, our solid hatch layer, and then we can turn the detail layer off. And what turning the detail layer off does is it's going to allow me to just fill in this area as long as it's a closed space. And so that's why I'll need to go and double check in like some of my window areas that this is all going to be closed spaces. This is a closed space too. I may want to turn my depth point line off as well, just because those lines may give me an extra thing that I need to hatch that I don't want to. And now when I'm in my poche hatch layer, I could do H, enter. I could go solid, and then I could just fill that in with only like a few clicks, which it seems there might be, it's claiming there's an opening somewhere in there. If I click, but if I click, it doesn't fill in with an opening. So sometimes it kind of pranks you. I do have to click in each one of these, But you know what? That's not too bad. Then I can hit escape and I can bring my def point lines back and I can bring my detail lines back as well. So instead of having to click in each one of them, I was able to just kind of pretty quickly get the drawing situated and sorted. Before I would finalize any of this too, or start doing my annotations, I'd want to get rid of these that I used as some guides to start figuring everything out. And then in the last video, I will go over adding in annotations in all of those notes. I will not add in every single note or every single annotation, even though I keep saying I won't do things like that, and then I wind up doing them. But rather, I'm just going to help you get kind of started of how you would place those things into the drawing.